A poor girl spends her last coins to save a stranger at the auction, unaware he's the Alpha King. What begins as an act of mercy turns into a destiny written in fire and love. She spends her last coins to save the Alpha from the auction, he claims her straight after. When a poor village girl spends her last coins to save a wounded man from a cruel auction, she doesn't know he's the fallen Alpha King, betrayed, bound, and forgotten by his own pack. But her act of kindness awakens a destiny neither of them saw coming. As the truth unfolds, love battles pride, loyalty clashes with vengeance, and a girl with nothing becomes the heartbeat of a king. This story will grip your soul, make you cry, and remind you that sometimes, compassion is the most powerful magic of all. The rain poured like judgment from the heavens that night, cold and merciless. The moon hid behind the clouds, refusing to witness the shame of what was about to happen. In the center of the dark marketplace stood a man, tall, bruised, chained, and stripped of his pride. His golden eyes, once feared by kingdoms, now stared blankly into the crowd. That man was the fallen Alpha King of Zarek. They called it the Night of the Hunt. A cruel tradition where captured beasts, rogues, and even fallen alphas were auctioned off like slaves. The rich came dressed in furs and jewels, whispering mockery, while the poor gathered in corners, watching in silence. And among them stood Ariel, a young woman whose heart beat too loudly for her thin body to bear. Her torn shawl clung to her shoulders, her sandals soaked in mud, her eyes burning with something fierce, compassion. She didn't belong there. Not among the wolves and the wicked. But life had a way of pushing the kind into the cruelest places. Ariel's mother was dying, her younger brother starving. Every coin she owned jingled faintly in the small leather pouch tied around her waist, just 5 silver pieces. Enough to buy medicine, or bread, or nothing at all if prices rose again. Yet, as she watched the Alpha kneel on the auction platform, something inside her broke. The crowd murmured, their voices slithering through the air like snakes. 10 gold for the beast, one woman laughed. He's not worth even a loaf, another sneered. But Ariel didn't see a beast. She saw a man whose eyes screamed of pain deeper than chains could hold. A man betrayed, not broken. The auctioneer raised his voice. 5 gold coins. Who dares? No one spoke. The Alpha was bruised, filthy, dangerous, a risk. But that silence made Ariel's heart pound harder. She could walk away. She should walk away. But every second she hesitated, she imagined her mother whispering her last breath, her brother's eyes hollowing in hunger. And yet, her feet moved. Slowly. Trembling. She stepped forward through the crowd. A hush fell. The people turned. The audacity of her presence, a girl so poor, bidding in a world meant for the rich, drew laughter. But Ariel didn't care. I'll pay, she whispered, her voice barely a thread. I'll pay with all I have. The crowd burst into cruel laughter. All you have? What's that worth, girl? But the auctioneer, seeing amusement in the chaos, nodded. 5 silver coins. Sold. And just like that, she had bought a man once worshipped as a god among wolves. As the chains were struck off and the Alpha fell forward, his knees hit the mud near her feet. The guards shoved him, but he didn't move. His eyes, fierce, golden, haunting, lifted slowly to meet hers. The rain ran down his face like tears he refused to shed. For a moment, the world disappeared. The crowd's laughter faded. It was just her, a trembling girl with nothing left, and a fallen Alpha whose pride had been shattered. He looked at her, not as a savior, but as something strange. Something pure. Something dangerous. And in that silence, he whispered without words, "You just changed your fate." She didn't understand then. She thought she had saved him. But that night, under the rain, when she spent her last coin to free the Alpha, she unknowingly bought herself a destiny that would burn through kingdoms. Because an alpha never forgets a debt. And a broken king never lets go of what's his. The dawn after the auction was quiet, too quiet for a world that had just witnessed humiliation. The rain had stopped, but the scent of wet soil and old blood still lingered. Ariel walked through the narrow path that led out of the market, her feet blistered, her heart hammering. Behind her, the man she had just bought followed silently, barefoot, shackles still dragging from his wrists. She didn't dare look back at him. She couldn't. Every step reminded her that she'd just spent the last of her coins, everything, on a stranger whose very presence could get her killed. The villagers who saw them whispered in disgust. That poor girl's gone mad. She bought a wolf. He'll eat her before sunrise. But Ariel kept walking. By the time they reached the edge of the woods, the first rays of morning touched his face. The alpha, though weak, still carried an aura that made the air heavy. His scars caught the light, his golden eyes glinting beneath matted hair. He looked less like a man and more like a storm waiting to break. Ariel finally turned to him. Her voice shook, but she tried to sound brave. You're free now. Go wherever you want. The alpha didn't move. He stood there, chest rising slowly. His eyes fixed on her like he was studying her soul. Then, with a deep voice that carried quiet power, he said only 3 words, words that made her stomach twist. I belong here. Ariel blinked. Here, she whispered. With me? He nodded once, not as a plea, but as a declaration. There was something terrifying about his calmness. His gaze didn't beg, didn't question, it claimed. That was the first time she noticed it, the mark faintly glowing beneath the grime on his collarbone, the alpha's crest. A bond seal. But it wasn't active, it was dormant, waiting for something, or someone. Ariel took a step back. No, you don't. I don't even know who you are. He smiled faintly, not kindly, not cruelly, but knowingly. You will. And just like that, he began following her again. No chains. No commands. Just silent obedience that felt more dangerous than any threat. When they reached her small hut on the outskirts of the village, her brother ran out, a frail boy with tired eyes. Sister, he cried, hugging her tightly. But his gaze fell on the stranger behind her, and fear flashed across his face. Who is that? No one, Ariel lied softly. Just someone I helped. The alpha watched the reunion quietly. For the first time, a flicker of something, pain, perhaps, crossed his eyes. He turned his gaze to the dying woman inside the hut, Ariel's mother, coughing weakly. Ariel rushed to her side, her voice breaking. Mama, I couldn't get the medicine, but I brought someone, maybe he can help us find work. The alpha's jaw tightened. Without a word, he knelt beside the old woman. His hand, rough and scarred, rested lightly on her forehead. The air shifted. Ariel felt it, an energy, faint but powerful, humming like the whisper of old magic. Her mother's breathing eased slightly. Ariel froze. What did you do? He didn't answer. He only looked up at her with eyes that burned gold again, brighter this time. You shouldn't have spent your last coin on me, he murmured, because now, I'm yours. The word struck her like thunder. She didn't understand what he meant, not yet. But in his tone, there was something ancient, binding. Something that sounded less like gratitude, and more like a vow. And in that small hut, as morning broke over the forest, a bond older than blood was quietly sealed. That night, the forest whispered. The air carried strange energy, part danger, part destiny. Ariel couldn't sleep. The image of the alpha's golden eyes kept flashing in her mind, the way they glowed when he touched her mother's forehead. Her mother was breathing better now, her brother slept peacefully, but Ariel's heart was restless. She stepped outside the hut, wrapping her old shawl tighter. The moonlight spilled across the clearing, pale and silver. And there he was, the Alpha, standing shirtless under the trees, his back to her, the faint marks of lashes running across his skin like cruel stories. He stood still. Almost statuesque, but there was a quiet rage around him. Ariel watched him, afraid to speak but unable to turn away. There was something about him, something not human, not entirely beast either. She wondered who he truly was before the chains. Suddenly, his voice broke the silence, deep and low. "You should be asleep." She startled, realizing he'd sensed her without even turning. I couldn't." He turned around slowly, eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. "You fear me," he said, not as a question but as a fact. Ariel hesitated. "You're different. I don't know what you are." He stepped closer, his movements graceful despite his strength. The closer he came, the more she could feel the heat radiating from him, wild and alive. "I was born to rule," he said softly. "Betrayed by my own, sold to my enemies, stripped of power. They called it justice. I call it treachery." Ariel's breath caught. The Alpha King. She'd heard stories as a child, about the ruler who vanished after a great betrayal, the one said to command the ancient bond of wolves. But he couldn't be. "You're him," she whispered. "The lost Alpha King." His gaze sharpened. "Names no longer matter. What matters is that you bought me. You gave what you didn't have, to save a beast no one wanted." He paused, then added with quiet finality, "That makes you mine." The words made Ariel's stomach twist. "Yours?" she echoed, half afraid, half confused. He nodded slowly. "In my world, a bond is sealed by sacrifice. You gave your last breath of hope for me. That cannot be undone." Ariel shook her head, stepping back. "No, I didn't mean for that. I only wanted to help." The Alpha's expression softened, just slightly. "And yet, you did what no wolf, no clan, no ally ever dared, you freed me." The night fell silent again, except for the sound of crickets and the distant rustle of leaves. The Alpha turned his face toward the forest, where the faint howls of distant wolves echoed. His shoulders tensed. "They know I'm alive," he murmured. "They'll come for me, and for you." Ariel's heart skipped. "For me? Why?" "Because you touched what they wanted destroyed," he said darkly. "You gave me life. And in their laws, that makes you part of my fate." Ariel's knees weakened. She had no idea that her act of mercy would turn her into a target. She looked at him, this man of power, of danger, and for the first time, she saw something else behind his eyes, guilt. He looked at her and said quietly, "You'll need to be strong now. Because whether you like it or not, the moment you bought me, you became queen in a war you never asked for." The word struck her chest like a drumbeat. Queen. She, a poor village girl, now tied to a fallen Alpha King. The forest wind rose, carrying the faint sound of growls from afar. Something was coming. And as the Alpha's golden eyes blazed brighter, Ariel finally understood, this was no rescue story. It was the beginning of a war written in blood and fate. The wind howled that night, sharp and cold, rattling the roof of Ariel's small hut. The fire had died down to faint orange embers, casting long, trembling shadows on the walls. Ariel sat by her mother's bedside, pretending to be calm, but her mind raced. Every word the Alpha had said kept replaying in her head. "They'll come for you." She didn't understand what kind of world she had stepped into. All she knew was that since the moment she spent those 5 silver coins, nothing had been the same. Outside, the Alpha stood guard like a phantom, tall, silent, alert. His golden eyes scanned the darkness. Every sound made his muscles tense, every movement of the trees made him bare his teeth slightly. He could sense it, the presence of danger moving closer. Ariel finally stepped out, wrapping her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "You haven't slept," she said softly. He didn't turn. "I don't need sleep," he replied, voice deep and controlled. "Not when the scent of my enemies is this close." His words sent a shiver down her spine. "You mean, they're really coming?" He turned then, slowly, his gaze piercing hers. "You think I exaggerate?" His tone wasn't angry, just cold truth. "The council that sold me to the humans will not rest knowing I live. And they will not forgive the girl who dared to buy me." Ariel swallowed hard. "Then we should leave. Go somewhere far away." A faint smile curved his lips, but it wasn't one of amusement. "You cannot run from wolves. They follow scent, blood, and bond. The moment you touched me in that market, your scent mixed with mine. They'll know you belong to me." The words sank deep. Belong. It wasn't ownership he meant, it was connection. A spiritual link she couldn't break. "But I didn't ask for that," she whispered, fear and confusion mixing in her voice. He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Neither did I ask to be betrayed by my pack. Yet here we are." The tension between them was heavy. Ariel wanted to be angry, but she saw the pain hidden in his eyes, the same pain she carried, though for different reasons. Both of them were survivors of cruelty. Both had lost everything. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the trees. Then another. The alpha's head snapped toward the forest. His nostrils flared. "They're here," he muttered. Before Ariel could ask who, a pair of glowing red eyes appeared beyond the tree-line. Then another. And another. Soon, 5 figures stepped into the clearing, wolves in half-shifted forms, claws glinting under the moonlight. "Stay behind me," the alpha said sharply. Ariel froze, heart pounding. The wolves moved like shadows, circling. One of them, larger and darker than the rest, growled, "Traitor. You should have stayed dead." The alpha stepped forward, no fear in his eyes. "Tell your masters," he said evenly, "the throne they stole will burn before I kneel again." The largest wolf lunged. It was fast, but the alpha was faster. In one swift motion, he caught it mid-air, slammed it into the ground, and with a single twist, ended the fight. The others hesitated. The air crackled with tension and power. Ariel could barely breathe. She had never seen strength like that, raw, controlled, terrifyingly graceful. The remaining wolves backed away, their courage fading. They vanished into the woods, their growls echoing in retreat. When silence returned, the alpha turned to her. His chest heaved, his hands blood-streaked. "You see now," he said quietly. "Your world is no longer safe." Ariel stared at him, at the man she'd freed, at the storm she'd brought into her life, and for the first time, she realized something. She hadn't saved the alpha that night. She had awakened him. The forest was silent again, but the silence was not peace, it was warning. The scent of blood still lingered in the air, sharp and metallic. Ariel stood frozen, her hands trembling as she watched the alpha's chest rise and fall. His eyes were no longer just gold, they glowed like molten fire, alive with something ancient and dangerous. The ground around them was marked with claw prints and broken branches, evidence of the battle that had ended too quickly to make sense. Ariel's heart pounded hard enough to hurt. She wanted to speak, to ask him who those wolves were, but her voice was trapped between her ribs. Finally, she managed to whisper, "You killed them." The alpha turned to her slowly, his breathing steady now, his gaze unreadable. "No," he said, voice low and calm. "I spared them. They ran. Because I let them." Ariel's brows furrowed. "Why?" He looked toward the trees, the moonlight reflecting off the scars on his arms. "Because fear travels faster than death. By sunrise, the whole realm will know I'm alive. And they'll know who freed me. The meaning sank deep into her chest. She clutched her shawl tighter. Then, we'll have to leave before they come again. The Alpha's eyes softened, barely. You still think you can run from destiny? She frowned, frustration flickering in her voice. Destiny? I didn't ask for any of this. I only wanted to help. He stepped closer, his presence filling the air like thunder before a storm. And you did. You saved me, Ariel. But saving an Alpha isn't an act, it's a bond. The universe doesn't take it lightly. Her name in his mouth sent an odd shiver down her spine. She wanted to argue, to deny it all, but something inside her, that strange pulse in her chest whenever he spoke, told her he wasn't lying. Ariel turned away, pacing, trying to steady her breath.
So what now? You'll just stay here and bring death to my home? The Alpha's voice deepened. No. I'll protect you. You, your mother, your brother. No harm will touch you while I still breathe. The way he said it, the quiet certainty, the promise that didn't need to sound heroic, made her throat tighten. She didn't understand him. He was powerful, proud, unpredictable, yet when he spoke to her, there was something almost gentle beneath the storm. Suddenly, a faint cough came from inside the hut. Her mother. Ariel rushed in, heart in her throat. The woman's eyes fluttered open weakly. Child, she whispered. Who is that man outside? Ariel hesitated. Someone I helped. Her mother smiled faintly, eyes tired but warm. You always had a heart too big for this world, but remember, my daughter, not every lost soul is meant to be saved. Her words hit deep. Ariel sat quietly by her side, holding her mother's frail hand. She didn't realize the Alpha had stepped into the doorway, watching silently, the flicker of sadness crossing his face again. He turned away before she could see it. The night swallowed his expression, but his thoughts burned bright. He remembered his fall, his betrayal. The ones who had chained him, sold him, laughed while he bled. And now, this fragile girl who gave up everything to free him, she had unknowingly become the only thing tethering him to his own humanity. When dawn finally broke, the Alpha stood at the edge of the forest again, the rising sun painting the world gold. He whispered to the wind, his voice low and almost reverent. She spent her last coins to save me. I will spend eternity to protect her. And though Ariel didn't hear those words, she would soon learn, some debts in the world of wolves are not paid in silver, but in blood, loyalty, and love. The next morning came soft and golden, but beneath that calm light, danger was already moving. The forest, once alive with birdsong, now carried the heavy stillness of approaching war. The Alpha knew it. He could feel the pull of his enemies, his former pack, tracking his scent through the woods. Ariel woke to find him standing at the doorway again, the sunlight brushing over his bare shoulders. He looked like a king even without his crown, strong, watchful, and somehow lonelier than the dawn itself. You're leaving, she said quietly, stepping beside him. He didn't look at her. They're close. If I stay, they'll burn this place to ash. I won't let that happen. Her heart sank. Then I'll come with you. He turned sharply, his gaze fierce. No. You're safe here. My fight isn't yours. Ariel clenched her fists. How can you say that? I'm already part of this. I freed you. I watched you fight for me. You think I can just sit here and wait? For a moment, the Alpha said nothing. His jaw tightened. Then, softer than before, he murmured, You're brave. Too brave for a world this cruel. Silence hung between them. Then, suddenly,
a gust of wind blew through the clearing, carrying a deep, echoing howl. It wasn't just one. It was many. The trees trembled with the sound. They had come. The Alpha's eyes burned gold again. Stay inside, he said. But Ariel didn't move. She followed him out, heart pounding. The forest edge flickered with shadows, wolves in their half-forms, circling like hungry spirits. And among them, a tall figure stepped forward, the traitor Beta who had sold his alpha to humans. Still alive, the Beta sneered. We came to finish what should have ended that night. The alpha took a step forward, unafraid. You can kill me, he said, voice like thunder, but the throne will still remember its king. The Beta laughed. Not when you've been tamed by a human girl. Ariel felt the insult cut deep. But before she could speak, the alpha's aura exploded, a burst of golden fire swirling around him, wild and divine. The earth trembled under his power. The wolves stumbled back, their confidence breaking. Call me tamed, he growled, but know this, her kindness freed me. Her courage woke the alpha you betrayed. Then the battle began. Claws met claws, growls shattered the air. The forest became a storm of motion, but the alpha was unstoppable. Every move was vengeance, every strike redemption. The traitor Beta lunged, but the alpha met him mid-air, their clash shaking the trees. With one final blow, the Beta fell, defeated, broken, silent. The others ran. The forest went still once more. Breathing hard, blood staining his arm, the alpha turned back to Ariel. She ran to him without thinking, eyes filled with tears. You're hurt, she whispered, voice shaking. He caught her trembling hands, his warmth burning through her palms. I've faced death before, he said softly. But this time, I had something worth fighting for. Ariel looked into his eyes, golden, fierce, and yet unbearably gentle now. And what's that? She asked. He smiled faintly, the first true smile she'd seen from him. You. Tears rolled down her cheeks. For the first time, she didn't feel like the poor girl from the village, she felt seen, chosen. The alpha knelt before her, his head bowed, a gesture that shocked even the wind. You gave everything to save me, he said. Now I give you everything I am. Light flickered between them, the ancient bond awakening, golden threads swirling around their hands. It wasn't a curse. It was destiny, sealed in loyalty and love. When it faded, he stood again, his voice quiet. You freed a fallen king, Ariel. But you also taught him what true strength is, not power, not vengeance, but compassion. She smiled through her tears. And you taught me that even broken people can still protect, still love. The forest breeze softened. The war was over. The alpha turned toward the horizon, his hand brushing hers. Together, they walked back toward the rising sun, two souls bound by fate, healed by sacrifice. Moral of the story. Sometimes, the greatest power doesn't come from strength or wealth, it comes from kindness. The smallest act of compassion can awaken something mighty, even in the darkest hearts. Ariel's last coins didn't just save a fallen alpha, they saved a kingdom. The end. Subscribe to our channel. Backhand index pointing right for more emotional and powerful African love stories every week. Bell, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more.